Solution of the second problem, which is the Sabu at the library. So here, as you can see, we would firstly try to understand the question and then build up the logic, and then I'll show you the problems, how it's solved. So we have two tables here. One is the X table and the other is the Y table. So the table X has a vertical stack of A number of Chacha Chaudhary comics on it, and table Y similarly has 5 number of comics on it. So on the X table there are A number of comics, and on the Y table there are B number of comics, and those comic books are kept up in a stack as it's mentioned here, one above the other. So it takes Sabu x1 minutes to read the ith comic from the top and table, so it would be obviously between 1 to 8 because there are total number of books are comic on X table would be 1 up to A, because A is the maximum number of comics on X table. And yth minute to read the ith comic from the top of the table, given that the condition, obviously the number of comics would be varying from 1 to B because there are no total number of B comics on Y table. So okay, so the xi, so I can range up to 1 to n, whatever, 1 to A, as it says 1 to A. So for me, first book takes 60 minutes and second book takes 20 minutes. So likewise the xi value can vary till A. So here you can see xi value and yi value. So now that is done. So consider the following operations. Choose a table with the comic remaining. Read the topmost comic on the table and remove from the table. So we have to just see whichever, on whatever table there is a comic there, you have to read it, and from the top you have to read it, and then you have to remove it from the table. So how many comics can Sabu read at most by repeating the operation, so that it takes him at most n minutes in total? He knows the time it takes to do anything other than reading. So yeah, so total number of time is given by the user itself, n minutes. So here you can see the sample input format would be, you would be telling them the number of books on table X, number of books on table Y, and the total time he has in hand to read those books. And the other input format would be, so what time it takes for him to read the first book on A table, for the second book on A table, and up to, you can so on go till XA. And the next line would be of similarly from the Y table. So how much time it takes for read the first book of Y table, second book of Y table, and third book up to the last book of Y table. So yeah, that's how you are going to put the input. And constraint, as you can see here is the given constraint, and all above our values would be integer, because there we cannot just say that there would be 0.5 minutes. Okay, so as you can see the time here is given in minutes, so we have to deal all this operation in minutes. So you can't just, and it would be integer itself. So here is given a sample input and output. So as you can see, there are 3 books on X table and 4 books on Y table, and total he has 240 minutes. So 60, 90, 80. So he can only read this number of books, right? 60, 80. So it would be 140, and 140 plus 90. Yep, 140 plus 90. So he can only read this much amount of books. He can't read this because he won't be able to complete reading the book, right? Because he has only 240 minutes. So the addition of all this books read should be less than equal to 240. That's the condition. So the output would be 3. So he would be able to read only 3 comics. So yeah, now I guess it's mostly been explained very well what is the sample input and what is the sample output. Now we know what is the question is, right? Now jumping towards the code, we have included the bits/stdc++.h. So we have included all the libraries and using namespace std, obviously. So now moving towards the main part of it. Now here we are taking the input of total number of comics on X table, total number of comics on Y table, and the total time which Sabu has, which is n. So we are taking it as an input here, and we are also declaring 2 vectors, which is vector v1 and vector v2. So we would be using this vectors to storing all the total time taken here in this vector. So yeah, vector, we are declaring 2 vectors, And for now, let's iterate. Let's take the values. We also have to take the input of to what time it takes to read the first book, to second book, to the x eighth book of the x table. So here we'll be taking the input of time, what time it takes to read the books from the x table. So here, as you can see, we have taken an input. We are going in a for loop cn I is equal to 0, I less than equal to a, I greater greater. So here we are taking as c the input as x, and if the ith value is 0, we are directly adding it into our vector with the pushback function. But if the ith value is not 0, then we would be going in this if loop condition, that adding the summation of it. So the 0th index would be contain. So here you can see the 0th index would be containing 60th value. The first index would be containing 60 plus 90, and the second index would be would be containing the value of 60 plus 90 plus 120. So we would be having summation of all the time taken on each index within the vector. So that's how we are using the vector here. So we would be getting, so now you have the idea of the vector, why are we using vector here, right? So we are doing the similar operations here on the vector v2, so as we did it on vector v1. But here is there an additional condition to it. So if the certain value at in vector v2 is less than equal to the total number of time taken, then you just add the addition to add to the answer. So it adds up to the answer. So answer is always directly 0, but then it would adds 1, that it can read one book, it can read two books. So likewise it adds up to the answer. So once it's greater than n, so obviously he doesn't have much time, because the total number of time taken shouldn't be greater than 240, because he has only 240 minutes in his hand. So yeah, now here in the second condition, we are iterating in the vector v1, and as we mentioned that he cannot have much time than the total given time, which is 240. So if at any instance in vector v1, the summation of the particular times at that index is greater than the total number of time, then it would break, it won't go further. So here we have declared a temporary variable, which is I plus 1. So our temporary variable plus equal to upper bound. So we are using the upper bound function. So upper bound function is that it returns the index nearest to the last parameter number. So I'll give you a better idea to it. So the starting point of vector v2 and the end point of vector v2, and this is the number to which we are finding the closest number in vector v2. So it would be let's say for the example 240 minus let's say it's the second number, which is let's say it's the first number 60. So 240 minus 60 is 180, right? So 180, so the closest number to 180 in vector v2 would be 180. So addition of it would be, so there are summation kept in it, right? So 180, it would be index 2, so index 1, right? So 0 1. So here the upper bound function would give the number would return 1 as its value. So temporary, so is equal to, so as I said, yeah, 1. So it would give one value and then minus v2 dot begin. So, and here in the next line you can see the answer equal to the max function, temporary and answer. So whatever would be the maximum value from the temporary variable and the answer counter would be considered. So here we are just giving out the answer, which is we have declared as, which is whatever the maximum would be from the temporary variable, whatever the maximum books he can read. So yeah, let's try and run the code and see the test cases. Yeah, it's working with all test cases.